Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Sorry, we're a little bit behind. A couple little issues, but like always, we got it all resolved. So thanks for joining again. Another Tuesday night. This was supposed to be a live from a couple of months, about about a month ago, and just didn't end up working out with the power outage and all that. I kind of sent out a note. So rather than waste a bunch of time, let me just say hi to a couple guys that were in here early. Bad Axe Bourbon, good to see you. Top Dog, good to see you. Roy, good to see you. Doug, good to see you. And everyone who is super chatting, you guys will be in for the running tonight to win a bottle of this great whiskey. Trust me, I've gotten into it already, and it's going to be something you guys will truly enjoy. So, Lance, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Garth, good to see you. Ben, good to see you. Terry, good to see you guys as well. So let's get going on this thing. We'll introduce everyone. We'll let them kind of talk a little bit about themselves, the brand, the whiskey. We'll get into everything. No particular order. We're just going to fire right away. So Clayton, thank you for joining. Kyle, thank you. Steve, thank you. And Ron, thank you so much. Appreciate it, gentlemen, for joining tonight. So very, very excited. I was excited when the power went out, and I'm just as excited this time. So this was, I'll say for me, within probably, right before we were kind of getting ready to do the live before, maybe within a month before that, I had someone send me a sample of it and was immediately kind of blown away. So I knew at that point, I needed to know more. I wanted to know a little bit more, behind it. I knew some of your names. I knew the names behind some of these things, but it's more important for you to be able to share that with everyone, more about the brand, yourselves, all of that. But like I said before, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining tonight. Greatly appreciate it.
No, thanks for having us.
So we'll start with the really difficult questions right away. So I guess, for each of you, in terms of your backgrounds, do you mind kind of just sharing a little bit with everyone as to, kind of how it started for you in terms of where we are now, but maybe kind of go back a little bit and just kind of let everyone know your background and how you kind of got into the industry.
How much time do we have?
Oh, we got all the time. We've got all the time in the world. We got all the time in the world.
Start with the dads and then bring the kids in.
That works. Yeah, let's start with the dads. That's for sure.
Ron, why don't you go first? You're the most impressive.
No, I'd rather start with you. You kind of help get this thing going. So I'd rather for you to do the first spiel.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this right away. I think you guys are going to be extremely impressed with the dads. I know we got the kids involved and stuff as well, and they're impressive as much, but there are some things in terms of their backgrounds that I think some of you may not know. So pay attention here. And Steve, you're up.
Okay. Yeah, my background is I started in the most unlikely place in my career as in the entertainment division of Deloitte, and then went to work for a client of mine and became the president of what at the time was the largest concert promoter in the country, and owned a network of 60 or 70 clubs and did 2,000 tours a year, owned 15 amphitheaters. And so in that business, we were obviously big purchasers of alcohol, but mostly in the entertainment business. And then I sold that company sold to Live Nation. And then I went and built out a network of television channels in Eastern Europe, in Poland, Hungary, Czech, and Romania. Sold those to Viacom, and came back and got together with another group, another guy, and we built a network of advertising, digital, experiential, sports, entertainment, fashion, PR companies. Bought 40 agencies around the world and sold it to a company called Omnicom, and we ended up in that capacity. We had about 700 clients, and many of my clients were beer, soft drinks, spirits companies, and because it lent itself to that kind of stuff. And so on one side of the business, I owned a lot of accounts, a lot of big amphitheaters, a lot of purchasers. On the other side, I marketed a lot of spirits companies, but I really didn't know I wasn't a spirits guy, but I loved the idea of the history and telling the stories around craftsmen. And so after I sold that company, I liked the spirits business because, particularly the brown spirits business, because it had such great history and lore, and it was very meticulous and process driven, but great stories. And really the thing that drew me to that category was the craftsmen, the people. Actually, I'm a sucker for people who make really great stuff. And so when we really started digging into it, the craftsmen at the time really were not given the credit that they were due, and certainly weren't participating in the brands that they created other than, work for hire. And so, but knowing, being an entrepreneur my whole life, I knew what I didn't know. And so I started, I pulled a group of salespeople and back of house people from Cruisin' after it got sold to Absolute, and started working on other people's brands and building essentially a toolkit to be able to really find and build very unique brands. And we worked on a dozen or so brands, but we always had the idea that we wanted to make something of our own. And we're just looking for brands that had a reason to exist. And my partner and I were friendly with Lincoln Henderson, and so that was kind of the germ of. And I mean, who better, to start, your initial brand with, inaugural member of the Bourbon Hall of Fame. And so I think we got a little feedback. And so we built Angel's Envy from a whiteboard in my office, and basically collided really great creators with really great creative people. And we saw a consumer demand that wasn't being addressed at the time. Nobody was really doing anything new in bourbon, yet consumers were really, if you really dug into the consumers, they were really looking for something to explore, something to kind of, to quell their curiosity. And so we built.
What was the time frame around at this point?
It's probably 15, 17 years ago.
Okay.
So that was the first brand that we started, and so we already had our sales force built. We already had our creative team because of my background, and then we started working with really great industry people. We figured out how to get distribution, but essentially we just really collided a bunch of superstars into a brand, and built it. And it was at first people they were not scared of it, but they most people in the trade thought that it was never going to work. A skinny bottle with wings on it, with a semi-feminine name. It was finished. Nobody did any of that stuff, but we really didn't care because it was really, at the time, it was just my money and a couple of partners, and we just said, hey, we like it. Hopefully somebody else will. And then that brand took off, and then we eventually sold it to Bacardi. But about 2/3 of the way through it, the Hemingway family came to me and my partner, and asked us if we would think about doing something in spirits that where they could give all the money to conservation and literacy charities. And so we liked the people. It was cool hanging out with Ernest Hemingway's only living son. I'm actually in Montana with the Hemingways. They live here. We're shooting some filming. And anyway, so we built a brand. We built a rum brand to begin with, but always had our eye on getting back into whiskey. And I have been in the business of buying and selling barrels, and I've known Ron for a long time, all the way back to the Cruisin' days. And then he started working on our rum, and then got to know his family really well, and he got to know my family really well. And we had an idea to do this whiskey for about 10 years, and I have been we've been working on trying to figure out where we enter whiskey in a place that we can tell a story that where we have a right to exist, or even a reason to exist. And so rye was cool for us, and then the connection between the rye and finished in our rum seasoned sherry cask that we use on our rum side. And for us, it just felt good, and we started tinkering around with different finishes, and we landed on this. But anyway, that's why I asked how much time you have, because that's my long-winded
I
story.
I mean, I would say so. I mean, really, other than that, not much going on for you. It's really what it kind of boils down
Right.
to. Yeah.
I
No,
just
I mean,
think Frank calls it.
I appreciate that. And I think, a lot of the, people who are watching this, are always interested how a lot of people, get to, this point. And for me, that's always been one of the more interesting things are oftentimes the people behind a lot of the brands, and who they've kind of brought on board, who they've kind of partnered with. So for me, I mean, that really sets up everything as to, where things were with, the company with the wings on the bottle and all that good stuff. As to where we are and kind of who you've become involved with now and having, kids in the business. I mean, I think that's all, very, very important. So, thanks for sharing that stuff. Appreciate it.
For sure. My pleasure.
Mr. Call, what do you have to add? Do you add a little something to that? I think, can't you?
No, not much.
No, I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
No, I just been doing this started 50 years in June. So I broke bread at Jim Beam in 1974, and my dad worked at Jim Beam also. And I had the privilege of working with Booker, and actually got to meet some of the old distillers like Parker Beam, who's passed away, and Jimmy Russell. And, Don Calhoun, he was a plant manager, but he gave me all kinds of opportunities that I took from production and distilling. But after that, after 16 years, I got a little bored there and I got recruited out and started working with Cruisin' Rum. And then they got bought out. So I started working with V&S Absolute Vodka and got to go to Sweden a few times.
Yeah, that's one plus with vodka, I suppose, right?
Yeah, but there wasn't no Swedish ski team. Those pretty blondes there. And then after that, I got recruited to come back, and I was working with Steve's group on this project. And I lost the picture here for some reason. I probably lost the damn internet.
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, you don't want to hear me cussing, so
that's fine. That's fine.
So anyway, I lost the picture, but I might as well live in Saudi Arabia with my internet service. So, but after working with Steve with the Pilar rum, and it was Steve's idea. He brought up about rye whiskey, and I said, "That sounds good." And he sent in 2 test barrels, and so I took it a little step further with our great minds working together, Steve's and mine, and we put it in some of our sherry cask, and it was actually phenomenal. And rye whiskey has changed a lot since I got into business. And this rye here is good by itself, but exceptional after it goes through our Oloroso sherry cask. So this is how it got created. And then the marketing part is the pretty package, but the liquid inside is phenomenal in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and I was saying to Clayton and Kyle before you guys even got on, just me getting into this stuff a little bit, like how really fantastic of a whiskey it really is. And we'll kind of dive into that a little bit later. So, but having that title of Master Distiller, how has that kind of impacted you? Like, how do you kind of like treat that? I know in like, my world, oftentimes people, love to, meet and talk with the master distillers and all of that stuff. And, and going all the way back to, the 70s and everything at Beam, has gotten you to where we are now. Obviously there's been a lot that's happened, but, do you have like a story you could share of something that was kind of impactful for you, as a master distiller that's kind of gotten you to this point right now?
I think the biggest thing being a distiller is I like to make sure products made the old way and meets the specifications that I know. But working with Booker, he was very innovative. And So he created some pretty interesting concepts that was actually very, very good. But his biggest thing was cost savings, and so I learned a lot of cost savings from him. But it's just the aging. Part of my job was evaluating all the warehouse samples, new whiskeys after it aged 4 years, and then making recommendations for the blending as part of the distiller's job. And I guess I learned more from evaluating thousands of samples from different locations of warehouses, how it affects the proof and the quality and the color and the cooperage. And most folks, they don't talk about cooperage. I don't think, I think because they don't know.
Yeah.
But the cooperage is, I'd say 50 to 60% of how your product finishes.
What would you say nowadays with all the automation that some of that stuff has kind of gone by the wayside in terms of the amount of like hands-on that you're able to really kind of test and monitor all this stuff? Do you think just because of technology that, you know, it's kind of gotten to the point where, you know, some of that stuff just gets kind of pushed to the side and just let automation take over more than it should? Or are you kind of, do you kind of embrace where technology is at this point and maybe producing as good or you know, not as good or better whiskey than it was, you know, back when you were, let's say, at Beam or something?
But I think on your distillation side, it's very, once you get your mashing and fermentation down, it's your distillation side that's really gotten automated. And I was more used to using a steam valve and a valve for your steam and a valve for your beer flow. And then when you start automated and connecting all that, and one of the best things I ever learned is being able to apply the science to the technology and the finished products. So I could see the gas chromatography and all the congeners that was created and what caused good congeners and bad ones. And same way with evaluating the samples. So yeah, there's technology is good, but it's good to have that old technology in your back pocket.
Yeah, I guess I would agree. You know, and I think, you know, a lot of people who are, you know, the old school part of things, I mean, that's just the way it was. That's what you had to work with and all of that. I mean, you'd probably find, you know, very few people that, you know, could even describe half of the things you were even talking about maybe nowadays. I mean, maybe not, but you know, there's something a little bit more, I guess I'll say, you know, romantic about like that craftsmanship that you guys, you know, did, you know, during your time. I mean, it was a true craftsmanship. I think, you know, nowadays, you know, the whiskey is really good, but, you know, pressing a button and kind of, you know, calling it yours, it kind of seems a little bit, you know, I don't want to like take away credit from anyone. I mean, obviously everyone's got great backgrounds and all of that, but I think I appreciate what it is that, you know, your generation did to pass on a lot of the info to everyone, you know, now, and probably to Clayton and all of that. Like, these guys are getting a lot of that info, you know, from great distillers, you know, like you. So it'll be interesting to hear the transition of that, you know, to Clayton and Kyle's roles and all of that. So with that being said, I guess either Clayton or Kyle, do you guys want to interject a little bit about, you know, kind of your involvement within the industry?
Yeah, Cal, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, take it away.
Not near as interesting as what Dad just said. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I grew up all around whiskey, rum, everything that Dad was doing. Through high school, college, summers, it was working at Florida distillers, you know, starting with the grunt work, mopping floors, cleaning tanks, you know, eventually bottling and producing. So, you know, it was basically you know, start from the bottom, work your way up. And so I was 4 years behind Jacob. Jacob did all that first. We also had a family farm. So that was another role that I had, was to go check cows, take care of cows, feed cows, all that good stuff, fix fence.
Yeah.
Me and my wife's first date girlfriend at the time was to go check the cows.
Yes.
Lo and behold, there was a calf that needed pulled. So yeah, but she still married me. So 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Must have been doing something right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with after that though, Dad kind of steered us to me and my brother both to, go out, do your own thing. Which Jacob went into banking actually, and he circled back a few years later and, got hooked up with Dad again and eventually resurrected Green River Distillery.
Mm-hmm.
I started my own business for 13 years. And I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago, at least 2 years ago, Steve, contacted me, talked to me about this idea of starting a whiskey and asked my interest. And obviously my ears perked up and, it was an awesome opportunity to be able to work with my dad and my brother, Steve, Kyle, Paul, just great people. So with this role, I've been doing everything from telling our family history to selling to helping Dad with the finishing process, blending, finishing. So it's been fun.
I knew when I was kind of like doing a little bit of like, background research and stuff. So and I know your dad was talking a little bit about, the cooperages and all of that and kind of like your involvement with, more of the selection of wood and kind of some of the different, species. I think, I guess me personally, and you guys can talk a little bit more about this, but it seems like somehow outside of the char part of a barrel, the other factors seem to get like left out. Like there's not enough like talk about the involvement of the barrel that affects the overall flavor of the whiskey as much. Do you want to talk a little bit about how for you guys that, how important ultimately the wood really is for the whiskey?
Well,
obviously
a barrel can do. No, yeah, it's all about the barrel. Like Dad was saying earlier, 50, 60, 70% of what's going to happen is from that barrel. So,
yeah. One of the things that we've done in the past is one of the things we looked at in doing this was really to do things maybe a little bit different and get a lot of experts in one place. We have, as part of our team, we have a master sommelier that ran all the master somms around the world. We have the calls, master distillers, and then we have the cooperage people. And between those sort of three people, we're able to think about different finishes and different barrels and different taste profiles from around the world. If you combine the wine side with the whiskey side, and then there's just the production of and this is the stuff that amazes me. So that's the reason why I talk about it, because I can't do any of it. Is this, the idea that we have this a fabulous master distiller, portfolio between Jacob and Ron, and then Clayton, and has had a long whiskey history. And then bringing in the cooperage experts, the wood innovation side, is just one of those things where it's like playing three-dimensional chess, but when you get it, you do it right, it's amazing. And so that from a guy that wants to get the craftsman in the right place to win, and then get out of the way and let them do their things, and then try to tell the story. That to me is what really, I'm passionate about.
Yeah. So Kyle, let's hear a little bit about you're kind of a young buck. So let's kind of hear your involvement and how you kind of, got involved with the brand.
Sure. Yeah. I have probably the shortest resume of the group here. So it shouldn't take too long.
Yeah.
When I started my career, I did a very brief stint in sports marketing and consulting. I was there for about 8 months, and then that's at the time that Angels Envy was starting to get going, and it was my dad and several other partners getting it off the ground. And actually the day I was going in, there was a need on the team for somebody young to just help push projects ahead and get it out of the ground. So the day I was actually going to quit at my firm was the day it was announced we were being acquired by Madison Square Garden. So I was sweating going into the day and very happy leaving it. So I didn't have to quit, and I was able to jump on board and really kind of just learn, right? It was a bunch of smart minds. It was the ability to see how you get a brand out of a ground the right way. Really push behind the makers of the whiskey, and really smart team. Be able to work with my dad, with the Hendersons, and see that, and wear a lot of hats, right? And learn a bunch of pieces of the industry. And so that's really where I got to see and found my love for whiskey in this industry. And at an early age, I'd say is where I really found my love for just being an entrepreneur, getting brands out of the ground, living in Poland when I was young, seeing my dad do it with a marketing services company. And so really Angel's Envy was my first run in the industry. Was able to wear kind of bigger hats when we launched Papa's Pilar as well, and help with go-to-market strategy. Really found a love on the digital side of things. Started my own digital marketing agency for the spirits world called the Drinkubator. Partnered up with a partner there, and really focusing on consumer engagement, utilizing strategies to get in front of consumers and engage consumers in ways that they really haven't been. It tends to be, and it's catching up quickly now, but especially at the time, it was a very outdated industry when it came to how do you, one, figure out who your consumer is, and then two, how do you engage with them and get them in one place and do some tastings and all kinds of events with them. And so when this was an idea, it made total sense, right? Being able to work with my dad, my brother Paul, the Calls, right? Ron, Jacob, Clayton here. It was a dream come true. So it's been a lot of fun getting out of the ground. The whiskey is phenomenal. So it's helped a lot.
You know, it's interesting because you can see, like, you know, in a nutshell, everyone's involvement, you know, from startup, you know, to Master Distiller, you know, and then all of you guys, the digital side of things, the marketing side of things, you know, everyone's involvement is, again, you know, all hands on deck, but it's every facet of creating a brand. So it's really kind of cool to hear everyone's, you know, involvement and the perspective behind things. So, all right, let's jump ahead a little bit. Let's kind of talk. I know Steve had kind of mentioned a little bit before with the name Hemingway, but I guess we'll talk maybe a little bit about that, and we can kind of start also, you know, talking a little bit about the Hemingway Rye and why all the components of this, and what made you want to kind of go down, you know, that path for your kind of your first whiskey. So. Anybody?
Yeah, I could probably talk about the Hemingways. This really is sort of a collision of three families. The Hemingways are very, very nice, very insular family. You know, kind of keep to themselves. A big cluster here in Montana. I come see them every year, and we go through what we're going to do, and then they're involved in helping us place their own charitable money, you know, the stuff that goes to their philanthropic efforts. We combine it together, but it's more than that. They go through, you know, they're out on the road having conversations with consumers and the trade. In fact, I was just with one of the Hemingways for breakfast the other day, and now we have a plan to go out and go to a lot of events for the upcoming year. We have some stuff that we're going to do in Europe together, a lot of stuff we're going to do in the US together. And it's been just a great relationship and a very authentic relationship. And what they do is they tie this brand back. It's not a facade. It's not a veneer of Hemingway. We don't slap the name on it and just pay a royalty. It's really, we really love the story. And he was the ultimate, you know, craftsman. You know, he really was, you know, paid attention to his craft, did things the right way. And he's you know, the brand, it's strange. It was, you know, that the Hemingway brand is probably as relevant or more relevant today than it was even when he was alive, because he just had that personality. I think he was like the forerunner of the experience culture. He would mortgage his house, his books, anything to go on the next adventure, and then he would journal it, and that was kind of his social media. And so what the Hemingway family does is really add authenticity to it. And then help us steer the brand in the right directions in terms of the things that he enjoyed, the places he enjoyed, the spirits he enjoys, those kind of things. And so it's really, you know, it's a very fun, cool, integrated relationship.
It's always interesting. It's always, kind of interesting to hear, when, when there's a name, a name like that, or a celebrity name behind something, and admittedly, I would say you're always a little bit skeptical, when you kind of see or hear, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with that a little bit as well. But I always appreciate it when, once you kind of get involved with the whiskey and maybe a little bit of the backstory of everything, and then really, understand and appreciate, what that is, more so than just really, a big name endorsing a brand just to put a name on it. This is, clearly far more than that. So, I would say to anybody right off the bat, just because there's a name on it, don't discredit it. Trust me. I mean, I've had it, and we'll talk a little bit about the whiskey here in a second. But I was curious when I saw the name, Hemingway, what that involvement would be. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I think that was really our concern. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were not big fans of celebrity-driven brands at all. Coming from the celebrity business and being in the entertainment business for a long time, most of those deals are pretty hollow, and there wasn't a real genuine connection with the products that they were selling. And so it's that's not to say that there's not a lot of great celebrity-backed products. It just wasn't something that we were interested in. But the story was so interesting, and how it really weaved into the making of the brand, and it was really kind of a symbiotic relationship. It felt authentic and organic, but we are a craftsman-driven business and not a marketing-driven business, and that is intentional, and it'll be that way for as long as we own this brand. Well, and you can see that by the people that you have involved. I mean, that's clearly 100% of the focus here. So, right, gotcha. Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the whiskey and kind of why this, what it was with the Oloroso and rum, and why rye, why rye versus bourbon. So then we can kind of just talk a little bit about that. Ron, why don't I tackle the rye versus the bourbon to begin with, and then you talk about the stuff that really requires smarts and expertise, which is how we make it. I'd already done bourbon, and as I said, we look for things that have a reason to exist, and in a place where there's probably demand that is out there that people haven't really met and haven't addressed. And in bourbon, there was a lot of things going on since, Angel's Envy and even before. And so there's a lot of bourbons out there, a lot of great bourbons, a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff. And we just looked at it, and we couldn't find a reason to really exist and be something different. And in rye, we noticed that there was a migration from bourbon to rye and from between brown spirits, and that the rye category had been growing for a long time. But there's not a lot. There weren't a lot of brands out there doing things differently. That created a taste profile that was interesting in a process. We break things down into 3 buckets because we just like it. It's product, process, and personality. And so the product has to have a reason to exist. It has to have packaging and liquid, and the process itself has to be, to us, it has to be something that's interesting to us, that requires, it's difficult, and crafts and rye is really hard to make. And then the personality has to have it has to have some kind of a personality to separate it from the other competitors. Yeah. Well, you've done a fantastic job with that, I'll say. Yeah. So that's the reason why we picked rye. Just, it was a nice place to be able to do something different in a category where we saw the consumers were looking for something for additional offerings, and we thought we might be able to make something cool. And then Ron can probably talk about the rye itself and why we did it, why we picked what we did, and so on. Yeah. I think that'll be interesting to hear. Because I guess just to kind of let everybody know, or if Ron, if you want to share what the kind of the mash bill of this and some ages and what the finishes are, just to give these guys a little bit of an idea of what this whiskey is truly about.
When I got in the business, most rye was 51% rye because it was so damn hard to make. Mm-hmm. And then these newer ryes, they're up to 95%. And and that takes some technique to do that. And the product's phenomenal. These ryes now, and they got some sweet notes with some dry, spicy notes, and then as I said earlier, when we got some excellent ryes. So with Olorosa sherry casks, we've had great experience with that, and I got a good supplier. And when we did our test on that, the product was, I mean, it was really open your eyes. And so that's why we chose the rye whiskey 95%, and then the Olorosa sherry casks. And then when we finish the rye whiskey in the sherry cask, it's kind of a time thing. So is it 3 months, 4 months? So it's a lot of tasting. You pull out your old copper thief or mule. We call them mules. Some people call them thieves. But and you just do a lot of sampling and tasting and submitting samples to other people. I mean, Clayton's a good taster, and Steve tastes once in a while, and my wife's a good taster. So we got some whiskey tasters in the family. So, you know,
that's important.
Being Southern Baptist, it makes it difficult, but
yeah, you gotta go a little easy. Don't tell too many people what it is you're doing.
I gave that up years ago. So, yeah.
Now, just to kind of let everyone know. So, just to kind of tell everyone. So it's a 9, and are both of the Indiana and Kentucky, are they both 95.5s?
Yes.
Both. Okay. So both of them 95.5, but it's 94% 9-year Indiana rye, 6% 4-year Kentucky rye, then finished in Oloroso rum season casks. Correct?
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Yeah, and it's and I always think it's interesting when you hear like that perspective of blending those two. I guess my question would be, why those percentages, and what did you do to kind of get to that those percentages that work for you guys? What was it about those two that, especially considering they're both 95.5, I understand they're probably going to offer something different, but what was it about those two that worked for you guys?
Actually, the 4-year rye kind of smoothed out the 9-year. The 9-year had gotten some wood notes. Mm-hmm. So the 4-year was very compatible with it. And then with the seasoning in the Olorosa, it turned out very nice. And, there's not right or wrong in this business. It's, at the end of the day, it's only what tastes and smells good, and the consumer likes it. So.
Yeah. That's real. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, I know, like, on my side, far too often you hear people, using those terms, good, bad, all of that. And, again, that's subjective, and what's good to you is bad to someone else, or whatever it may be. So, getting in that game of trying to, tell people that it's good or bad, you guys have developed something and have probably, your tasters that want a particular profile and that works for you, but making sure to create something that you think is going to be, where you want it to be is the most important part. And then, like, I feel like for me, when I try this or taste it, I go into a little bit of a different kind of, process of wanting to try to, break this thing down and think about it a little bit. And for me, I guess, just to kind of let everybody else know, like, when I first tasted this, I should even go back. When I first smelled it, it was like, for me, I was having a hard time believing that it was only 100 proof. It felt like it was going to be more. So when I tasted it, the balance and complexity of it really, I felt, was one of the better kind of blends that I've had in a long time. I felt that both the rum and the Oloroso were working really well together, but identified themselves, separately without overpowering the rye whiskey, if that makes sense. So everything had like all its layers, and I'm sure this is exactly what you're going for. But I'm the one thing with finished whiskey is, so much of the time it seems like the finish takes over and eliminates the whiskey, and I feel like what's the point of having either young or old whiskey if your whiskey just tastes like either rum or Oloroso? And this did not do that for me. It was extremely well balanced, and so great job with that first and foremost.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why we say we finish the taste. Like Dad was saying earlier, we don't just put it in there. Okay, let's check it in 6 months. I mean, it was literally a few weeks and then every week after, until everyone agreed that, this is what we want.
Yeah.
Until Dad said "damn good." Once he said "damn good," we knew we knew we hit it. So
that's how you know.
I mean, sometimes when you're a man of a few words, there's just a couple words you need to hear, and at that point you better lock it down and we're good to go and all of that. So
but Ron has got code words. I mean, you really can't get damn good out of him. I mean, it's usually a qualifier. That's good for what it is. I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know how to take anything away from that. Is it good? Was it not good? And so we had to kind of put together a code word book for Ron so that we know when we're there. But I think that you're right on target with the rye, because we wanted the rye to be up front, and the finish to just maybe knock the edges off of it a little bit and give it a nice balance, as opposed to smothering the rye into being a dessert rye or something like that. We weren't interested in it. So I'm glad that you picked up on that, because that's really what we were trying to do.
Yeah, I had in my notes, like the first thing was that I mentioned. I noticed immediately that the balance of it was incredible, and then very, very quickly that rich fruit came in, and again a little bit more of those tropical notes, I'm sure probably from the rum, and then it got to that buttery layer, which I'm sure was probably coming in a little bit from the Oloroso or whatever. So in my mind, I was trying to dissect this, and it was just doing it all for itself, and it was just kind of for me a beautiful sipping finished whiskey. So
yeah, I think to really enjoy it, just enjoy it without trying to dissect it too much, So
no, I know as much as that. So I'll tell you a little thing as to how I do it. Oftentimes, if I don't care to want to try to and maybe you guys can comment on this, how you do it when you're drinking whiskey. But for me, if I don't pour it in a Glencairn, I don't find myself wanting to try to dissect. I'm just enjoying it. So I'll drink it out of a really nice, just rocks glass, just still neat, but I don't find myself wanting to nose it like I do with either this little Copita or whatever it may be. But I get that. And like Ron said, he's like, you know what, forget all your little stupid tasting notes and all that. Just drink it and enjoy it. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. It's do you like it or do you not? I know that sounds, very good, but someone who does whiskey reviews, if I did it and just said, hey, I like it or I don't know how much I'd be able to do what I do at all. So I gotta take a slightly different approach. But again, I think it's important for people to understand what this whiskey really, really, truly represents.
And
there's a bet. Go ahead, go.
And I was gonna say it was really fun to see it come together, right? Watching the calls as they were creating and speaking with Ron, knowing that he wanted the rye to really stand out with the subtle finish to it. It was just as kind of sitting on the side and watching the whiskey come together. It was something really special. And knowing that we had some really quality 9-year-old Indiana rye and 4-year-old rye that Jacob himself made it was a really fun experience to go through.
Was there something when you guys were putting all this together that kind of each of you wanted that you ultimately got to, where this is now? Was there, kind of some, I don't want to say pushback, but was there, some good conversations about, where you ultimately wanted, this whiskey to be?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was, what we did was we got it to where we wanted it, but then we let it run and with the finishes for a lot longer. And then just to see if it was going to get better or worse, and it got worse. It just overpowered it. It wasn't better. And so, there was a nice little sweet spot in there that I felt was that we almost all, even the most unsophisticated palates said, okay, that's it, that's different. And it was kind of interesting. It was cool because the 4-year-old that Jacob made himself at Green River with the 9-year-old, they're two taste profiles that together, just the whiskey was phenomenal. And then finishing in rum seasoned sherry cask, which is a strange comment because it's really hard to replicate it, because who's going to dump rum into a Oloroso sherry cask and then finish it again? We just had those because we were using it, and it was one of those things where Ron tends to do this. He probably has 30 or 40 like elixirs in his and agings that are going on at any point in time, and half the time I don't even ask what's in it, because I make this joke that when we go into the lab, if I'm there for 30 minutes, I need to call an Uber. If I'm there for an hour and a half, I need to call an ambulance. So I just want to make sure that that the stuff, Ron has all these different things. And that was one that the idea was pretty on target to begin with. And then it just kept getting better. And the idea now is that Jacob when has built his distillery in Owensboro. They're producing whiskey now, and so we'll migrate this whiskey over to our home distillery in Owensboro as well. So the idea that Jacob had made the 4-year-old, and then it moves over to Western Kentucky Distilling, that's the home of Hemingway Whiskey, and so it had nice add-ons to the actual product being good.
Is the idea behind the brand to actually have different finishes, or will this be kind of the flagship where you always have this, or is the idea to have maybe the same rye or blend and then kind of do different finishing casks?
Kyle, you may want to talk to that a little bit.
I think this will be our bread and butter at the moment, and we'll do some test barrels, just see how it goes. But you don't want to rock the boat when you're selling a little pretty good. So but we got test barrels out there. So we got some interesting stuff going on. So
Ron always does. I think every time we walk in the lab, I'll hand you samples and say, "What do you think?" before telling you what it is. But this is our first edition, and so this is a limited release. We are launching our signature edition with the same finish, rum season sherry cask that'll hit in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so the signature edition will release, and then behind that there's a few other releases coming out over the next 6 to 12 months that I think will be a lot of fun.
Ron doesn't hold his cards close to the vest; he holds them inside of his vest.
Well, I want to make sure it's good before anybody.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably that different perspective. And knowing that Ron kind of dealt with like Booker and all that, I always wondered like what if you told Booker back then you were considering finishing a whiskey, like what he would have said to you.
I don't know. Booker was pretty damn creative. I can tell you that. I mean, but his last push to his fame was the Bookers. Yeah. And I think he knew his time was getting close. So I think that's why he really came out with Bookers. And, he was super proud of it. And my dad worked with Booker, and shit, we all sit on his porch and drank whiskey sometimes. So
yeah. I'd love to have a live stream just to talk about stories, but we're going to talk a little more about some Hemingway stuff. So, well, that's great. I'm glad. And I guess for you guys to maybe, interject to everyone watching now or on the replay, what is it that you want everyone to know about, a little more about your brand and your whiskey and kind of like where things are ultimately, going for you guys?
Something I noticed about this whiskey, if you drop an ice cube in it, it just opens it up to something different. I mean, it's good as is, but if you drop an ice cube in there, it really opens it up. So that was kind of phenomenal to me what an ice cube would do to a glass of whiskey. So.
Now when you say an ice cube, like would you also consider like this, even maybe a couple drops of water, do you think, in your opinion, that would kind of do the same thing?
I don't think water does anything to this, but that ice sure does.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I got to go get some more in a minute. So.
Yeah. Gotta have to just make sure you were correct on that, right?
Yeah, my glass is empty.
Oh, that's not a good glass right there. Must have a slow leak or something in it.
No, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking it's in terms of the future of the brand and where we want it. I think we're very different than many brands in that we put out stuff that we like when it's ready to put out, and that sounds like contrived, but it's true. We're not chasing anything. We're not chasing, a million cases. We're not chasing, we never have done that, and it's been, been good to us. We've been successful in just getting it to where we like it, and then seeing how consumers feel about it, and then do something else and see if they like that, and then run from there. But there's not, we don't have a schematic that looks like the engine room of like the Nimitz or anything. It's in terms of a product roadmap. It's just, we just keep making things that we like. There'll be some of the usual suspects that come out, but with a different twist on them, in terms of finishes and strengths and so on and so forth. But it is kind of just, we get ahead of it. We're usually, because we have, and as I said, I've been, I've had whiskey, since before Angel's Envy. That was really where Angel's Envy came from. I had a couple thousand barrels of Kentucky whiskey that at the time I bought for $300 a barrel, which you can't do now. But and then since then I've just been, just finding stuff that I like and holding it. I sell some of it, but for the most part I've just been holding on to it, and so we have a lot of raw material to work with. We're not going to run out of whiskey anytime soon. Yeah. And we have a whole bunch of different profiles, so there's a lot to do, and then making our own, and then blending. There's just it's almost open source innovation, from there.
It's kind of a refreshing perspective to hear that, because there's so many brands that are the restraints that don't allow them to do probably what it is they want to do, where they have to kind of do more corporate type of things, release whiskeys when they have to, not necessarily when they're ready. So, to me, listening to that really echoes more, you're really focusing on what it is you want to do, the quality of the whiskey. And when you guys think ultimately together that it's ready to be released, then everyone gets a great whiskey.
Yeah, and then success takes care of itself from there on out, or it doesn't. It's either people like what you make or they don't. But at least you're not forcing the process. We don't get into value engineering these things at the outset. We overspend for a lot of stuff, for product packaging, finishing, and but it works out. It's just we'd rather not, we'd rather not release something that looks corporate or cheap, and doesn't taste corporate or cheap. And so if it all lines up, and we'll figure it out.
Well, one thing I'll say, that I thought you guys did that was really kind of cool on the back, was for everyone to kind of, I don't know if anyone can see this, but back in the day, I suppose if you're old enough and ever went to a library where you actually had a little slider in the thing when you kind of checked a book out. I know there's probably some younger people in here that have no idea what the heck I'm even talking about, but I thought it was kind of cool where, you guys, almost wanted to make this where you could make it a memory. So if you're sharing this whiskey with somebody, a date, their names, who it was you shared it with, because, ultimately at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, is, sharing whiskey with good friends and family and all of that. And, it really seems like with your involvement with the kids in the business and all of that's truly ultimately what the brand is representing, not only, family, but high quality. And, that's a pretty awesome thing to be able to see from the outside, looking in. So.
Yeah, we tried to make it, an uncluttered package. It wasn't and frankly, Hemingway probably would have thrown it at you if he saw a package with all kinds of iconography all over it and all kinds of graphics, and it just wasn't him. He was very to the point. And it was funny because when we did the library card on the back, one of the older creative people that we had associated with the brand said, "How many people you think are going to know what a library card is?" And it was just, I don't care. It's a social card, and we're finding that people are posting the cards, with their friends, and then they're actually putting them in they're framing them, and so it ended up being, it's functional. It's something cool and fun, and it brings back a memory when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of does. I know everyone always has a little something in their mind, but if you've got a bottle that you can write a date down and kind of who you shared it with, it makes it even that more special, and maybe even wanting to go back later on down the road, depending on how long you have it, because it's a pretty darn easy whiskey to plow through. I don't know how many people honestly, I don't know how many people I could even share this thing with before there was not many names on that card, to be honest. But I thought when I saw it, I'm like, that's a really just a cool thing to kind of help make it a little bit more of a memory. So, I thought that was a really cool little touch you did. So you got old school and new school, the QR code with the library card.
Right.
So
that's Kyle and Ron.
Right. That's one thing I was going to emphasize is just to everyone is just stay tuned, right? I think the team that we have, it's the best team I've ever worked with, not just between the three families, but also Forrest, who runs a lot of our brand marketing and community, and Lindsay, who's been instrumental in packaging and some of the concepts we have coming down the road. I'd say that the signature that's coming out in a few weeks is definitely worth a try. And trying it at cask strength was one of the cooler opportunities I've had, which may or may not be on the roadmap here. So
I was gonna ask you a little bit about the signature and if there was a cask strength. Well, I guess speaking of that, is the signature what we're talking about now, or is that something different than this?
It's different. So this is the first edition. Okay. The signature will be released in the next 4 to 6 weeks. It should be hitting shelves. Okay. And will that'll be our rye whiskey that'll be available every day.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yep. All right.
That will be 102 proof.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you got to jump it up a little bit in proof, and then there may or may not be a cask strength version coming.
No, it's possible.
So you can see like there's the young guard who is like keeping things kind of close to the vest, and then like my dad would be Ron. My dad will just say whatever it is, whether you're supposed to say it or not, which I appreciate. So I know I'm not going to get any information that I want from Kyle, but I think if I keep going, Ron will give me every bit of information he wants tonight. So yeah. I'll keep on pressing.
If he refills his glass, yeah, I think he'll probably get a lot.
I might even be able to become part of the whole Hemingway team here if I ask Ron after he has another pour or two of this. It sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ron hires people every Friday and Saturday night, and then I gotta then show up at my doorstep on Monday.
We were talking about the library card, but some of the stories that came back on social media about their children sharing it with their fathers on Father's Day. I mean, one of them was almost a tearjerker, So it was amazing, So
it's been amazing. Yeah, the stories. There's the photos shared. Someone got a special treatment for their child. Someone made it their first hole in one and wrote it down on the bottle. So it's been really inspiring and just fun to see
it's cool. And as much as we're talking about the library card and everything, for everyone watching now or the replay, do not forget about the whiskey. I mean, ultimately that's the most important part, and it's an absolutely fantastic finished rye whiskey. So I mean, hands down, I'd say for me, it is and no BS, it's probably one of the better whiskeys that I've had all year. So kudos to that. I mean, I think it's just really done well. And I know you guys probably drink a lot of other whiskeys, and I'm sure super proud of all of this, but you should be extremely proud of what it is I think ultimately you've you've created from whiskey to brand and all of that.
Oh, thanks. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
All right. Well, we're almost an hour in. I knew that was going to go by pretty quickly. So I'll give it a couple more minutes. If there's anyone who wants to last minute get involved in the thing, we'll enter you in the wheel of happiness. We're going to call it tonight. So I used to call it something different, but Steve wanted me to call it a little bit something more happy. So
I want to buck tradition.
I'm gonna deviate from my normal wheel of death, and we'll call it the wheel of happiness tonight. But so as far as things with the brand and going forward, I know so like let's say for Clayton, like what is something that you're kind of looking forward to in the near future with the brand itself in terms of creating more whiskey.
Dad he just popped another bottle.
I'm gonna have a new job by Monday, aren't I?
You're on the team.
No, it's like they were saying, it's going to be exciting to test new finishes. That barrel strength, cask strength could be very interesting. One term that comes to mind when I tried it at that was bubblicious, bubble gum. So
interesting.
That could be definitely interesting. Yes.
I think it's going to be cool running the stills and with Jacob in Kentucky as well. Just getting on and getting your fingernails dirty.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. We're looking forward to.
We have some cool ideas about growing our own crops up there as well.
Yep. Have our own rye fields and
there's enough acreage on site to grow Hemingway rye, so we can use our own rye grain to make our Hemingway whiskey. So
I suppose at the end of the day, the more things you have control over, the better off your products ultimately will be in the end. So it's always interesting to hear from the distillers, to other people that within the brand, where they want things to go, and all of that. So it's nice to see everyone, all of your involvement with everything, and just kind of how really focused and driven you are on ultimately creating the best possible product you can have. And it's, like I said, it's really reflective in the whiskey itself. So
yeah, we'll be able to control our own rye and our own cooperage. They have a cooperage on site and before long. So we'll be able to control our number 4 char that we spec in, and we control our Oloroso sherry barrels. I mean, we kind of control everything from front to back, which is important in this business. Instead of having to go to a broker and pick up cooperage, we'll have our own cooperage. So.
Will you have a place within, let's say, a year where people can visit and buy your product at your distillery, let's say?
We may or may not have one.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be there yet.
Yeah.
There'll
be plenty on the shelf. So.
Okay. All right. Where are you distributing to so far at this point? Where can people buy your whiskey? I know it looks like you can buy online, but in terms of markets that you guys have, where are you actually at this point?
So right now, online we're available in most states through some retail partners. We are on the shelf in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Florida. And as Signature launches over the next 6 weeks, we're launching 9 new states as well. So stay tuned. We'll announce that on our website, on social, and to our Hemingway Social Club as well. Every time we launch a new state.
Well, boy, 9 states. That's a big jump.
Yeah, we're not going to go overboard with we're not going to sell any more whiskey than we would have with less states.
Yeah.
Just because we're going to make as much as we can make. But on the back of a lot of the distributor meetings, it was there was some fairly very strong demand to go into some state, and it made sense to do it. And so we'll just add it there. And the one thing that's nice is that we're unlike other brands in that we have our own infrastructure that we built over the last 11 years for Papa's Pilar in terms of sales infrastructure and things that are already existing in states. So we're building from scratch when we go into new states. We already have, we have accounts, we have salespeople, we have, we already have our marketing infrastructure and so on. So it's not like, a new greenfield build every time we go into a new state.
All right, so we're getting a couple of questions, and so selfishly from my side of things, knowing what this whiskey is, so myself and another friend run a pretty good sized whiskey club called Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. What are the chances of working out a barrel pick? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but we're only accepting answers that rhyme with yes. We can we'll talk about it. How's that? We'll talk about it.
Stay tuned.
Kyle's
Stay
the guy
tuned.
you have to talk to about it.
It's certainly something we're working on right now, so it shouldn't be too long.
All right. Well, I know your email, so if you don't block me from receiving too many emails, then I might send you an email or two. But all right, Ron, you're being put on the spot. What's Ron's favorite way to drink your whiskey?
Well, this whiskey here is definitely straight, but it's good with a chunk of ice in it too. So, but definitely straight, or it makes you can always do a Manhattan or old fashioned with it, but I think that's a waste. So I would just sip it, enjoy it.
Yeah, honestly, with the layers and a little bit of the sweetness that it has to it, without even thinking like Manhattan or something along those lines, it's almost kind of in that realm at this point anyway. It's that kind of enjoyable,
Let me tell you a little story that we presented this whiskey at a site in Fort Lauderdale, and there's a pretty good crowd, and there's a chef there. And he took one of those glasses that you like, and he stuck it to his nose empty for probably 30 minutes, just smelling that glass. I mean, there's something in there that this chef loved, but it was quite amusing to me that a guy walks around with a glass stuck to his nose for 30 minutes with nothing in it.
You know what? That's one thing I would say, that with a really good whiskey, I find myself, and I think a lot of other people do as well, but just smelling something can be just so incredible. As good as it tastes, there's something about smelling something that is fantastic. And I know exactly what he means. I mean, just smelling this, and as intense and developed that this is, I can only imagine. I'm probably going to do it, now, because Ron said don't do it. So I'm gonna drink this. I'm gonna let it sit for a little while. Then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do it. I might even videotape it and send it to him if he wants. I know exactly.
I don't care what you do. So.
just drink it, right? Just drink it.
Yeah, just enjoy it. So
yeah. So all right, let's do this. So I think everyone we got involved. Let's run the Wheel of Happiness, and we'll see who tonight's winner is for the Hemingway Rye. And thanks again for all of this. I greatly appreciate everyone's time tonight. So. All right, let me share the screen, and we will find out really quickly as to who tonight's winner is. All right, everyone see that?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna shuffle it just a couple times to make sure there's no cheating. And here we go. Wheel of Happiness.
This is exciting.
Very exciting. Mr. Copperwolf is the winner for tonight.
All right.
Congratulations,
Mr. Copperwolf. So let me get rid of that. All right, Copperwolf, you'll have to send me some info. We'll make sure to get the bottle and everything to you. But so as far as social media is where people can find you, if there's anything else you want to share, do you guys want to go through a little bit of that? We'll wrap things up. Ron, where can everyone find you on social media?
I'm kind of like a groundhog. So
I'll jump in there, Ron.
All right, I wanted to kind of get after you like that, because I knew I would probably get the same answer that I got from my dad that I would get from you. So that no social media. He said you might have found me a few years ago in the paper under the arrested section, but that would be about being anything. So we won't look for you in that section.
So
Yeah, no. Hemingway Whiskeys. So Facebook, Instagram at Hemingway Whiskeys. Our website as well, HemingwayWhiskies.com, is where you can learn more about our first edition. Currently, you can buy online. You can figure out where it's on shelf near you. And then you can also join the Hemingway Social Club through our website to stay tuned on upcoming releases, get early access. We did a fun virtual tasting with this first edition as well, and have some fun events coming up.
Awesome. Clayton, what about you?
Clayton.call on Instagram. That's about it for me. So
okay. All right.
I'm a little bit higher up than Dad, but not too much,
Okay. That's okay. Steve, what about you? Anyone track you down?
Not really. Me and Ron, we hang out on a rocking chair with a whiskey and let everybody else, has their head explode on social media. Just I try to keep a low profile on that stuff. So let the brands talk for themselves.
I hear you. Sometimes I feel like the social media stuff is always at times a little bit, too much. But man, the simple things can be nice too. But with that being said, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining tonight. I think it was interesting to hear, you guys share a little bit about, your history, the brand, the whiskey, all of that, where things are ultimately going with the brand. So that's really, really exciting. So thanks again for joining tonight. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks, everyone, for participating tonight. Everyone with the super chats, thank you guys so much. Copper Wolf, congrats on that. We'll work on getting that stuff taken care of for you from there. So, guys, again, thanks again. We'll see you next Tuesday with another live stream, and we will see you guys next week. Cheers, guys.
all right.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Good night.